Here is a fun scenario. You walk into work first thing Monday morning and your boss is already extremely upset. He is upset because he missed a high-value meeting with a high-value client. There is an employee that works in the department that you oversee that was responsible for ensuring that that individual got to his meeting. He blames his assistant, saying that he got the time and date from her. She says it's literally on the schedule on the online calendar invite. The question is, who is responsible for the boss missing his meeting? The employee, the assistant, or the boss? Let's talk about it. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Solutions Podcast. As always, your host, Ramzy. So the topic of this episode is going to be something that I learned very, very, very young and that I was able to master through a book from Jocko Willink called Extreme Ownership. The concept of this is to literally own all the mistakes that happen within your circle or around you. This concept is extremely important to nail down if you ever want to actually find peace and actually organize your life. Let's go back to this scenario, right? The truth is, you're at fault because you oversee the department. It's not the assistant, it's not the employee, and it's not the boss. He is the boss for a reason. The person that is at fault for that is you, because that is your department and you should own it and you should take the responsibility that mistake happened. More than likely, when you do that, it's going to end up in an ass chewing, but it will be okay. But what happens is when we throw the fingers on the blame game, no, it's this person's fault because they took this action in this mistake. True. Or it's that person's fault because they took the action and the mistake. So let's break this down. The assistant got it from the online calendar link. The employee got it from his assistant, which was her job to get that done. And the boss, he's just the boss, right? And of course, we cannot blame necessarily the very important client because he is the very important client. He is the center of this scenario. He's the only one that has no fault or no part in the game, unless he changed it without telling anybody. But for this scenario, that's not what happened. Let's see how we can throw some blame. Okay. When it comes to the assistant, yes, you have an online calendar link, but did they ever verify the information via voice with the client? More than likely not, if the response was that they got it straight from the online calendar link. Okay. Now let's look into the employee. How would he have blame in this? Well, there's a thing that we like to say, trust but verify. Did he verify, or did he just take her word for it? Or was it the client? Did he change plans last minute? We already established that's not it. So who do we put the fire to? Who? The truth is, it's you. It is your department. So it is your job to analyze all the steps that went wrong to ensure they never happen again, but it's up to you to take full responsibility for the mistake that happened so it does not get repeated. Now, this is just a fake scenario, but I want to take the time to talk about a real scenario, a real event that happened not only around me, but it actually happened to me. So I do a lot of things. I am an ordained minister. I am in the military. I do this podcast. I have ran karate schools before. I have had a hell of a past and a bunch of achievements. Now, one thing that I'm working towards right now is, right, I joked around a couple of episodes ago about being called Dr. Ramzy in order to help promote awareness to what's going on with Jordan Peterson out in Canada, where they're really trying to take away his doctorate and his recognition and everything that he worked for just because he does not believe the ideologies of the current political state in the country that he's from, which is Canada. So I figured if somebody could just take it, then why can we just not give it? And again, this is just in protest for his defense. That is it. But from my end, I am working on becoming a professor on an institution that I cannot talk about because I'm not there yet. The thing is, currently right now, I am going through my certifications, and unfortunately, I failed one of my lessons that I had to give to a live audience. I failed to the standards of what the accreditation body is. I don't want to put their information out there for security reasons and for myself, right? So I take this really hard because I am not a person that fails often. I work really hard and very meticulous to make sure that when I do something, I do it right and I do it to the standard that I uphold myself to. But I failed, and it was a hard pill to swallow. But the thing is, the people that I did the lesson to, which are actually my peers and people that have already been certified, all thought that I did a great job and all said that they're surprised that I failed. And they asked me, okay, what happened? Like, what did they tell you that you did wrong, or where did you fail? And there's so many thoughts that went through my head. I wanted to say it was their perception or their biases or their ideas that did not match mine, whatever I could have said. But the truth is, the fault was 100% mine. I own it because I did not perform to the standard that they wanted me to perform to. And everybody kept looking at me like, no, really, like, what was it? What did they say? And I told them, like, it was just me. I could tell you everything that they said, but it wouldn't even make sense. And you probably said that's not a reason to not pass. But at the end of the day, it was just me. I did not deliver it to the level that they wanted it, whether it's their perception or biases. At the same time, can I do it better? Yes, 100%. I don't think there's a human on this planet that does not believe they cannot perform better at any task that they do. So, can I do it better? Yes. Can I be more well-versed on the topic? 100%. I can look and dig to ensure that if there's any wild questions that were to come up or anything that was to be brought up about that subject, I am well-versed on that topic. I could do so many things to make sure that I pass the next time around. So at the end of the day, I said, hey, I bombed, I failed, I'm going back to the drawing board, and I'm going to perform it as soon as possible and make sure that I blow them away. That is extreme ownership. And I'm more at peace, and I'm sure that added more respect to me than what it would have been if I would have just been walking around with my head down saying, all poopy face, like, oh, they just don't like me or whatever it could be. But at the end of the day, it's their job to make sure that we are performing at the tip top because we are the face of the organization. So it is my job to perfect my craft. So when it comes to leadership and supervisory roles, the first question you got to ask yourself when something goes wrong is, how could I have prevented it? And you have to look into how can you make this your own fault? Why is that? Because true leaders and true supervisors and managers and whatever it is that you do when you're in charge, hell, even parents, something as simple as being parents, A way that you become useful and become essential is by getting yourself involved in looking for friction points, looking for things that could go wrong. Because Murphy being Murphy, Murphy's law, if it's something can go wrong, it will. You want to ensure that you are at that friction point. You want to just take the time to look at all friction points that could happen so they will not. That is how you start to begin this mindset of extreme ownership. Those one thing is to understand. A lot of times there's not necessarily a bad team, but there's definitely bad leaders. You know, when you go to work or you go anywhere, you have that boss you just don't want to work with, or that supervisor you don't want to work with, or you just look at them like, man, I know I could do this better. Why are they where they're at? Right? And that's just looking from the down up. But if they were to take this concept, they'll be like, and actually own it, own the project, own the position. Hell, you could be a McDonald's shift manager, own the shift. All the other shifts can be fucked up. All the other people can have the broken ice machine, but not you. You're going to be on it. You can always make a difference when you realize that there's not a bad team. It's a bad leader. And that bad leader could be you sometimes. But if you start owning every single flaw that happens, you'll see how those flaws will slowly diminish or minimize completely. The next thing that I want to ensure that you are doing with yourself and with your team is actually believing in whatever it is that you are doing. And I know this sounds cliche. Believe, achieve, you could be anything you want to be. Yeah, no, all that gay shit is just that. It's just words. What I'm talking about is actually believing in the overall mission. All jobs have a mission statement. All shifts have an end state. Everything has a purpose. So first and foremost, you got to look into yourself as, do I actually believe in this? Yes or no? If the answer is no, ask yourself why. And if you cannot find a reason, or if you just do not believe it because it does not align with your personal values, it's time for you to leave that organization. Now, if once you get to the point where, okay, this is real, I believe it, I truly do. Now you got to sell that idea to the team, because the weak link will break that chain. So you got to ensure that you are so passionate about whatever it is that you're doing, even if it's just the leadership aspect of it. Again, and I break it down to something as little as McDonald's or whatever it is that you're doing, because it is important. Because a supervisory role is still a supervisory role. If you're in charge of setting up the tables, hey, you're in charge of setting up the tables. You ever have done anything, even as a kid, where you just knock it out? You had that pride because everybody looked at like, oh man, you did this. That's pretty good, man. Every single thing that you're in charge of, own it and own the purpose behind it. And if you're working with a team, make sure that they are believing in the end state as well. Give it to them in whichever way you have to. I always talk about, managing your boss's ego, but not just your boss's, it's your people's too. You got to get them to work. You got to motivate them somehow. The big thing that's going to help that is going to have them actually believe in the overall mission of whatever it is that you're working on. The other thing is that you have to do is not you, well, it is you, but also with your people, is to make sure that that ego stays in check. That is very important to master extreme ownership. Because it's very easy to say, as we talked about the scenario, it is very easy to say, hey, that was the bottom of the barrel mistake. That assistant's getting fired. Boom, that's it. It ain't me, Don't hate the player, hate the game. Hell nah, homie, you're still playing that game. You're still playing that game. So you got to keep your ego on check. You got to make sure that you don't feel like you're above the law. You're above the rules. You're above getting fired. Every single time you go to work, you go to perform like you might get let go. Not only that, is what do you want people to know you as? The person that made excuses and blamed everybody else for everything that went wrong, or the person that took it in the chin and kept pushing forward and motivated the people around them? Who you want to be? You tell me. All right, so now that we have the knowledge of saying, hey, whatever goes wrong, it was because of my bad. Now that we have gone over and read over the mission statement and the overall mission of whatever it is that we're doing, or we have found the purpose for our job or for our employment or for whatever it is that we're getting ourselves involved into, right? We got those two things locked down. All right. We have our ego in check and we're stroking others. No diddy. Okay. And we're stroking others, making sure everybody's at peace and feels valued. What's next? Well, we got mistakes. Make standard operating procedures that are simple to follow. One thing that I love about the Army is that we operate at the dumbest level. People don't want to say that out loud, but we do. Everything we do is in threes. You don't believe me? Especially you in the military, you happen to listen to this. Army specifically, right? Everything that we do is in three. Teach, train, educate. Shoot, communicate, kill. Everything that we do is in three. Why? Because it's simple. 1, 2, 3, ABC. Michael Jackson said it. So when you're making your standard operating procedures to ensure that everybody's tracking what things should look like, make them as simple as possible. When you're writing these things or when you're breaking them down on a step-by-step basis, pretend that you're teaching your child. And I know that sounds very disrespectful to insult people's intelligence, but fuck it. I'd rather insult their intelligence than believe there's something they're not and things go south, and then I got to look in the mirror and say, why did I allow that to happen? But make those plans extremely simple. Simple, simple, simple. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. Next thing you want to do in a supervisory role, when that helps this topic keep going and keep moving forward, first and foremost, shout out if you're still here, because it's a lot to learn. It's a lot of information to get. But once you get it, trust me, you're going to be golden. But the next thing you want to look into is to prioritization and execution. One thing I have talked about, I think I even talked about it in my first episode, is that I literally write a list of every single thing that I got to do, to include wake up, brush teeth, get ready, every single thing. I do it to the bare minimum of everything that I got to do, like every single thing. And I do this because, again, I like to keep life simple. So if it's there and I know I got to do it, it says, wake up and put your clothes on. That means I'm going to wake up and put my clothes on during this time, from this time to this time. This is what I got to execute the next task that I have in my list, right? But we have to prioritize that list. When I'm making that list, I write it all down first, and then I really look at it. It's like, okay, what is more important? What do I got to make sure that actually happens today? And then I move it up on the list and up on the list and up on the list until everything is in a standard way that is going to, one, make sense according to the time that things have to happen. Obviously, I'm not going to eat breakfast after I already did my 12 o'clock meeting. That doesn't make sense, right? Use common sense when it comes to this kind of stuff, but also prioritize key tasks that need to be accomplished. What needs to happen? For me, one thing that I got to put up there is the gym. The gym needs to happen. It's not a if, it's a must. And it happens. So once you have that prioritization list, it's time to execute, baby. It's time to execute. Ensure that you're getting those tasks done and that your people are getting your tasks done. And when we're talking about execution, make sure we have to add in delegation. You got to know how to use your assets. You got to know how to use your people. You got to know how to use your team, because that is what makes you a great leader. A great leader is not one that does everything and knows everything. No, that is cute. You know everything. You're the smartest person in the room and no one gives a fuck. Everybody hates that guy anyways. No. A great leader is one that can manage his team the best. His or her team. Let me be inclusive, okay? His or her team. We got to make sure that we're able to motivate and navigate the people around us. That's what's going to separate you from your peers. That's what's going to have people remember you as this was a great supervisor. This was a great boss. This was a great leader. This was a great person that was around me. He never made excuses, always took responsibility, and he was able to manage us like a champ. He always has, I didn't have to worry about what I had to do. He had it on point. He didn't micromanage me, but he had it on point. I didn't have to show up to work and wonder like if I'm just going to waste my time, because I knew I wasn't, because this fool had it. This dude had it. So that prioritization and execution is extremely important. Now, we talked about prioritization. We talked about execution. Now we got to talk about that delegation. And that delegation is going to help you a lot, right? So if you're lower level supervisor, you're going to delegate the little key task to your people. But what happens when you're the head of a department? You got to decentralize your command, man. You can't just get everything straight from the boss, code it yourself, and expect everybody to execute. You're never going to have time off. What happens if you have an emergency? You also got to keep work-life balance. You got to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing and why we're doing it and how to do it. You can't hoard that information. Yes, as we talk about power dynamics, there's certain things that you got to make sure that you keep yourself valuable and that no one can take from you. But when we're talking about operationally, that's got to go out the window. When it's time to execution and to operate, you have to make sure that everybody knows what's happening and why it's happening. If not, they're going to question when it's happening. Oh man, you should write that one down. All right, now it's time to wrap it up. First and foremost, appreciate everybody that stayed tuned and that continues to stay tuned. And please, as always, share and like the content. And please feel free to give me any feedback necessary in order to continue to give y'all good product. I got to give credit where credit is due. And of course, like I said, this is a concept that I've been working on my whole life. Believe it or not, somehow I was blessed to have either good mentorship, my little guardian angel gives me good advice, whatever it is, I've been blessed. Some people say that I make leadership easy or make it look easy, which is good. But sometimes I feel like that's a crutch, because that means that I cannot work as hard as somebody else would. So I do lack that type of mental toughness. But at the same time, I am trying to give it my all and give my soul and give it to y'all. Now, again, we talked about extreme ownership. Whatever it is in life, try to find a way to look at how you contributed to that action happening. Look at it, how did you contribute to making that mistake occur, and how you can prevent it from reoccurring. If that means you have to get more involved with your team, get more involved. If that means uncomfortable conversations, learn to have them. Whatever it is, make sure you own it. That is the preference of this episode, extreme ownership. Again, shout out to Jocko Willink. Great book. If you have not read it, or if you're looking for something to read or to listen to, Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. Very good book. And there's some spots that kind of get a little weird and whatever, but the message overall is phenomenal. Once again, thank you everybody for listening, for staying tuned, and I am out.